MAGA cultist Jim Jordan baffled even his Republican colleagues when he subjected the American people to an unnecessary and strange press conference this morning, which lasted only about 8 minutes, and in which he answered no questions directly. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, so again, we're not going to play the whole thing because it begins with this very strange anecdote about the Wright brothers who created the first airplane, and I think he was tacitly comparing himself to the Wright brothers. Like, listen, if at first you don't succeed, you just keep trying. You eventually create an airplane and eventually put a man on the moon, etc. and so forth. It's this really clumsy metaphor. But for whatever reason, Jim Jordan, right before he's going to attempt his third bite at the apple, his third shot to become Speaker of the House, again, called this press conference. It's 8 minutes long. He answers questions, or takes questions, rather, at the end of it. Doesn't really answer any of them. It's very strange and indicative of a man who has no idea what the hell he's doing. Enjoy.
And right now, those people, I think, are starting to doubt and wonder about their government and about where our nation is headed. They see an open border. They see crime in the streets. They know what it costs to put gas in their car. They know what it costs to put food on the table. They see a war in Israel, our strongest ally, Israel, and what's happening there, and the help that Israel needs. And they see a government that's been weaponized against we, the people. The very government that's supposed to serve us has been turned on the taxpayers who pay for it. I think the American people are thirsty for change. I think they are hungry for leadership. And frankly, they know that the White House can't provide it. They know the Senate won't lead. And they are looking for House Republicans to step up and lead and make change on these important issues.
Obviously, right out the gate, there was so much wrong with that. So again, he's so concerned with these culture war talking points and the Twitter files and the alleged weaponization of government. Never mind that the man he supported for 4 years, Donald Trump, and still supports now, has actively called for the conviction, the imprisonment, the investigation, the prosecution, actively called for it of his political enemies. He did so when he was sitting president. But Jim Jordan doesn't care about that. All that Jim Jordan's frustrated with is that the FBI is pursuing cases, legitimate cases, against conservative criminals. He doesn't think there should be any accountability for right-wingers who break the law. That's what he means by the weaponization of government. I also think it's hilarious that he talks about, really, they're hungry for leadership, and the White House won't provide it, and the Senate won't provide it. It really comes down to us in the House. Well, the White House and the Senate are open. Joe Biden hasn't spent the past 17 days off. He's still the president of the United States. He actually just got back from Israel, an active war zone, his second in a year. That's 2 more than Jim Jordan's ever been to, 2 more than Donald Trump's ever been to. He's actively providing leadership. The Senate, even with a razor-thin margin, and somebody like Mitch McConnell running Republicans in the Senate, they, for the most part, have their act together. It is the House. The House is dead weight. And by the way, the House isn't dead weight because of Hakeem Jeffries and House Democrats. The House is dead weight because of Jim Jordan and Jim Jordan's party, and Jim Jordan's party alone. So just hilarious revisionist history that Jim Jordan's engaging in.
We got important work to do. Important work to do. We need to help Israel. We need to get the appropriations process moving so that the key elements of our government are funded and funded in the right way, particularly our military. We need to get back to our committee work, and frankly, we need to continue the oversight work that I think is so darn important. In short, we need to get to work for the American people. We need to do what we said we were going to do. We need to do what we told them we were going to do when they elected us and put us in office. And frankly, we can't do that if the House isn't open. We can't open the House until we get a speaker. My favorite scripture verse is 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul's the old guy giving advice to the young guy, Timothy. And he says, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. And I tell folks, I love that verse because of the action in it. Because of the word. Americans aren't timid folks. They're people of action. And the words in that verse, fight, finish, keep, I think fit the American spirit. Americans expect their government to fight for them. They expect us to finish our work. And they expect us to keep faith with the principles and values that made us the greatest nation ever. Made us the nation that could go from the Wright brothers to Neil Armstrong. That's what we have to keep in mind. And that's the kind of attitude I think we got to have. The quickest way to get all this working is to get a speaker elected. That's what I hope we can do today. I'll take your questions.
Okay, again, all nonsense. So again, he gives the game away at the end of, towards the beginning of this latest segment where he says the oversight responsibility that I just think is so darn important. That's what he's talking about. Again, Jim Jordan has not passed a single bill in his 16 years in Congress. Congress is a legislature. Its purpose, its explicit purpose, its highest purpose is to legislate. Jim Jordan doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, he's actively said that he did not come to Congress to pass more laws, okay? He lives only for the gotcha culture war moments, the Twitter files hearings, the fourth or fifth or sixth investigation into Hunter Biden. Just investigate Hunter Biden, a private citizen, in perpetuity. That's all Jim Jordan cares about. And with the House of Representatives closed, he can't do that. It's absolutely despicable. And again, the only other thing I'll add to that is I love how he appeals to the principles and values of America when poll after poll after poll shows that Republican politicians are more out of step with those principles and values of the majority of Americans than any Democrat. I digress.
Good morning. So lay out your path. Are you just going to call roll call vote after roll call vote today and tomorrow and into the weekend and try to wear your opponents down? Because it didn't seem like you made any progress yesterday.
Well, you all said that we were going to lose between the first vote and the second vote. You all said we were going to lose 10 to 15 votes. We stayed the same. We picked up a few. We lost a few. I think the ones we lost can come back. So, look, there's been multiple rounds of votes for Speaker before. We all know that. I just know that we need to get a Speaker as soon as possible so we can get to work for the American people.
So what's your strategy? Are you just going to keep doing what you've been doing and failing, and not only failing at, but actually failing more at it with each subsequent? Every time this man calls a vote, he loses more votes. So what's your strategy? I don't know. We just need a new speaker.
Thank you, Congressman. So just to be clear, do you plan to grind this out this weekend if you don't get the votes today? And then secondly, President Biden, as we heard last night, is sending a $100 billion foreign aid package here to Congress. Is that something that
You're making the case for why we need to get the House open so we can evaluate the package. We can't do that, can't vote on that, can't pass anything in that until we get the House open. So I got to see the package, but we certainly need to help Israel. But I got to see the package. But again, we can't do that if the House isn't open. All the more reason why we need to get the House open as soon as possible.
Actually, he makes a case against the case he made earlier. He claimed earlier in his prepared remarks that the White House isn't leading, the Senate isn't leading. Well, that entire exchange torpedoes that case. President Biden is leading. He is proposing a $100 million, aid package. Constitutionally, Congress, which includes the House, has to approve it. And the only reason that's not being done or even being considered is because of Jim Jordan and Jim Jordan's party. So it's Jim Jordan and Jim Jordan's party who aren't leading.
Mr. Jordan, what do you say to the people of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, that you're not able to provide aid to Israel because the House is so blocked up?
Again, I think you're making my case. I got 200 votes, the Speaker designee from my colleagues. The sooner we can get this accomplished, the better for the American people who expect us to work for them and for our friends and allies like the great state of Israel.
No, what he should tell his friends in Israel is that, listen, we as Republicans care more about not working with Democrats and, again, culture war nonsense and owning the libs than we do getting our act together, because we can't get our act together. So you would think that at least 5 of the 18 Republicans in swing Biden districts would defect and at least vote for Hakeem Jeffries, who, by the way, has his entire caucus behind him, all 212 Democrats. So if Republicans can't get their act together, and they've proven that they can't, then there should be at least 5 reasonable Republicans who value the work of the country over, rank partisanship, and get Hakeem Jeffries elected speaker. So if you can't do that and won't do that, then just tell the people of Israel you care more about this infighting and not working with Democrats than delivering results for both people here in the United States and our allies abroad.
In your conversation with members yesterday, were you able to get any of the ones who didn't support you previously to pledge to you that they would switch their votes?
We had a good conversation, and we'll continue to do that. But as I point out, the fastest way to get to work for the American people is to elect a speaker, so the House can be open and we can get things done. I'll take a couple more.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Congressman Ken Buck has said that one of his doubts are the 2020 election and your view on that. So I'm going to ask you 2 related questions. One, what was your intent when you emailed a memo to the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, suggesting that Vice President Pence
That
he should forego any unconstitutional votes? And do you believe the 2020 election is stolen?
I think there were all kinds of problems with the 2020 election. I've been clear about that. My intention in forwarding the email was an argument made by former Inspector General for Donald Rumsfeld, accomplished lawyer who laid out an argument from the Federalist Papers. I forwarded it on to them. That was all of us.
So we'll stop there because the last one, again, is just a question that he doesn't answer directly. So that question about, listen, there are some Republicans like Ken Buck, again, the Republican congressman who intrigues me the most right now, who says, listen, he would be more inclined to vote for you if you would at least admit that President Biden is the duly elected president, the 2020 election wasn't stolen, and maybe we should start to reaffirm America's faith in elections. And Jim Jordan has been one of the most outspoken proponents of Trump's big lie. But notice how he even he kind of equivocates there. So do you believe the 2020 election was stolen? I think there are a lot of problems with the 2020 election, and I've been very clear about that. So I almost wonder if that answer was kind of a miscalculation, because obviously it's not going to do anything to sway people like Ken Buck, because they want to hear a full-throated, of course the election wasn't stolen. It's been proven time and time again that it was a free and fair and secure election, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to, but President Biden is the legitimate duly elected president. So he failed in that respect, but he also, I imagine, didn't satisfy what MAGA wants and probably what his master Trump wants, which is, of course, the 2020 election was stolen. It's an absolute disgrace. He tried to walk this weird path down the middle, and I think he's just going to displease everybody. In terms of the memo, he forwarded a text of a memo written by this deranged right-wing lawyer who said, listen, Mike Pence should just disregard all the electoral votes that he doesn't think is constitutional, because Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Number 78 said that no legislative act which is contrary to the Constitution can be valid. So if you think the electoral votes going for Biden are unconstitutional, then you can't count them, or you shouldn't count them, because they're not valid. It's a absolutely farcical and sophomoric argument to be made. It's not like this rich, nuanced case, and the reason Jim Jordan forwarded it, is because he absolutely believes it. He just didn't want Joe Biden to be the president of the United States. If that attorney had said, listen, you can't count Democratic votes, electoral votes for Democrats, they're just by definition unconstitutional just because we feel like it. If an attorney had written that, Jim Jordan would have forwarded that as well. So I want to play you some reactions to what the Fox News Network had in response to Jim Jordan's pointless, strange 8-minute press conference.
So that was Jim Jordan, the speaker designate, giving a press conference about the status of the speaker's race. Doesn't look like he has support yet, Brian and Ainsley. I'm not sure what the purpose of the press conference was. He took questions from the folks, but it looks like he's still just trying to rally the troops.
Yeah, so you have one Fox guy going, I don't know exactly what the point of that was. And then you have, I think, Brian Kilmeade as well.
I don't know what the point was. Everything that we just learned, we knew, except for that Jim Jordan is not quitting. Yeah. And there is no Steve Scully sitting in the background. There's no Kevin McCarthy comeback about to happen. Don't know.
So I want to play that again.
What the point was. Everything that we just learned.
They're laughing. I don't know what the point of that was. And you're getting that from Brian Kilmeade and the people at Fox and Friends. You've really lost the plot. Again, I want to point out that Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News, one of the most prolific reporters, House Republicans, so Jordan supporters and opponents, are completely befuddled by that press conference. I've gotten a number of what is he doing calls in the last 20 minutes. Several House GOP members tell me that Republican lawmakers are going home this weekend, so the GOP has to be very careful about holding speaker votes this weekend. They could perhaps inadvertently end up electing Hakeem Jeffries. And then lastly, a source describes the Jordan meeting with holdouts like this: a direct, precise meeting in which Jordan was told he will never be speaker. The group doesn't want anything. They just want Jordan to understand he will not be speaker. And yet, I think at the time of this recording, they're going to attempt a third bite at the apple. Folks, again, it's entirely possible, I guess, that Jim Jordan, I've been saying that, of course, because I'm a cynic, so I don't want to jinx myself. It's entirely possible that Jim Jordan may end up becoming Speaker of the House. It looks less likely with each subsequent vote, but this is where they are. His pointless, early 8-minute press conference, he didn't articulate a strategy. He didn't articulate any meaningful gains. It wasn't for hype purposes. It wasn't an appeal to anything. He just said the obvious: we need to get a speaker. And then he lied about everything. It's the White House's fault. It's Democrats' fault. It's the Senate's fault. No, sir, it's your fault. It's your fault and your party's fault, because you and your party are uniquely incapable of responsibly governing. You are inferior in all ways to every Democratic politician. You have no place in government, and hopefully 2024 will be a referendum on how much the GOP leadership sucks, and they have no role, they should have no role, rather, in government in a modern society.